I like watching Rampage Poker punt off.
Moving on to the next one with a $25 straddle still on, I pick up 8-7 of clubs in the cutoff. Raise it up to $75 and I get the straddler to defend. Off to a flop we go of 10-9-4 rainbow.
So we raise it up to 75 and we are playing about $2,500 deep. So kind of deep stacked. We flop open-ended. The opponent's going to check. I think you can usually bet this hand playing very deep stack because if you bet and get raised, you can continue. If we had a weaker draw, perhaps you don't necessarily want to bet it because if you bet and get raised, then you have to fold. That said, I think you can probably just continue with this hand. So I'm okay betting it because right here, if you bet and get your opponent to fold out, ace high, king high, queen high, whatever, it's a pretty good success.
My opponent checks it over to me here, and I think sometimes I want to check. Yes, I am open-ended, but I have 2 undercards to the board, so bloating up this size of the pot here isn't amazing. I decided to check this one back.
Look, I realize you certainly don't want to bet if you know you're going to get called every time or raised every time, but you don't know that. Right here with the big blind, or the straddle in this case defends, it's pretty easy for them to have nothing. And if they just have nothing, they're going to fold and you're going to win the pot. And if they do call, which is usually what's going to happen, then sometimes you're going to spike on them where you can continue bluffing. I definitely like betting the draws that have low showdown value, but pretty good equity. Whatever, check, check.
The sneaky check back rewards me with the 6 of hearts on the turn. Bank City with the nuts. And my opponent actually leads for $100 now.
All right, the opponent bets 100. Should we raise? What do you think? Take a second, think about it. Look, you typically do want to raise when your hand is very good and vulnerable. And also you want to raise when stacks are very deep stacked. Now right here, I don't think we're all that vulnerable. We're really only worried about the other straight draws and flush draws, but there are some available. The opponent also didn't bet too big. They bet 100 into 165, so it's not like they bet some giant amount that will let us make a logical shove over them on the river and get stacks in. So look, this is an annoying spot. I think if we raise, we're going to have a hard time getting called unless the opponent's a bit of a calling station, but I think we got to put in a raise, right?
And sitting with the nuts here, definitely want to start bloating up the size of the pots, have the best hand possible, and raise it up to $375.
So Rampage definitely gets the idea of raising right, but my main concern here is that I don't know if we have a whole lot of draws, because if we had something like a junky backdoor flush draw on the flop with hearts, we're probably just going to bet it, right? Like say we raise king 5 of hearts, we're probably going to bet that on the flop, which means we don't have that going to the turn, right? Which means we don't have too many logical heart draws that want to raise. Maybe we want to raise with 2 pair. 2 pairs almost always good, but you got to think we're going to bet a lot of our pairs on the flop, right? So we don't really have a lot of those. So it starts just to become kind of hard to find both value hands and bluffs in the scenario that actually want to raise. Now, look, I do realize in loose, splashy cash games, you certainly can raise very wide here and get called by middle pair. But when someone bets 100, you make it 375. I think they pretty much have to have a pretty good hand to call or a high equity draw, one of the two, which, you know, is fine and good, but that's going to result in them folding out a whole lot of hands that are drawing dead. And I like raising. I'm not sure I like the size, though, because I think we're going to have a tough time getting action.
Honestly, at this point, I don't think I'm representing a whole lot, but my opponent does make the call, so we're moving on to the river, which is the 8 of diamonds.
Pause. So Rampage does realize here that he is not really representing a whole lot of anything. That said, sometimes in loose, splashy cash games, it just doesn't matter. Put in a raise with your nuts and get called and bloat the pot. I mean, there are a lot of spots in cash games where I don't play anywhere near GTO. A good example is when the flop when we see a very multi-way flop, very often the GTO strategy is to bet small with whatever you're going to bet with, because you're betting into a lot of people, all of whom could have the nuts. But exploitatively, just bet big because people are going to call you with all sorts of middle and bottom pair junk that you're going to get a lot of value from. And this is a spot where, you know, we probably don't want to be raising the turn all that often, but might as well go big if your opponent's never going to fold top pair. River 8, that's bad because it's going to kill our action, right?
Definitely not loving this card, but still with the straight, gotta bet this one, I think. My opponent checks, and I decided to go massive to 750.
So pot's 915 here. Maybe I mentioned the stack depth slightly wrong. I believe the opponent has 1,600 behind. I think that's right. Maybe they have a little bit more than that. I think massive here would just be all in. Assuming the opponent has 1.5x pot. If they do have more like 2,003 or 2,100 behind, 2.1 pot all in's probably a little bit too much. It's gonna be tough to get called. Look, whenever your betting range on the river contains some effective nuts, like right here, we could probably have queen jack. We could probably have jack 7 suited if we didn't bet it on the flop, although again, we probably bet both of those, right? We definitely have some 7s, which are almost always good. So I like a big bet. And if you told me you wanted to bet overpot here, I think it's fine. And you could also do that with some busted draws and going to put your opponent in a very difficult scenario. I like a big bet though.
Trying to get called by 2 pairs, maybe even some sets somehow. And
I do think the opponent is going to have a lot of sets and 2 pair when they call your 375 raise.
And when my opponent actually ends up check jamming, he goes all in for 1655.
Oh my God. So 1655. I'm not sure if this is 1655 more or 1655 total. It's not 100% clear. Whatever. It's a check raise. So, wow. Well, I thought we had the nuts, but now we don't apparently. When the opponent calls the 375 on the turn, what does their range look like? Well, in my mind, it looks like a lot of flush draws, queen jack, and sets and 2 pairs. Will sets and 2 pairs jam the river? Probably not. That would be ridiculous. Will queen jack, obviously. Will a 7 if they have it? Because they could have, whatever, something 7 of hearts. I think a 7 will probably shove the river, but maybe not. It's tough to know if a 7 will shove the river when you bet so big on the river. You also block a 7. Not the ones that you're worried about. You're more so worried about the backdoor ones, right? Look, I would be annoyed and called here, but I think it's closer than you may think, because if your opponent's not jamming with sets and 2 pair, are they really going to bluff after you make this big river bet in a spot where you could just have a 7? Because you have to realize some of Rampage's bluffs are going to be with a random 7, right? So given they're going to have, Rampage is going to have a lot of random 7s, I don't think the opponent gets to bluff shove us all that often in this scenario. So I think their range is going to be a lot of queen jack. Maybe like jack 7 of hearts, right? That would make sense. Can we fold, though? The problem is when we call it, I really just don't think we're getting more than half the pot out of here, but tough one. It's a tough one. Look, you all know me. I really hate to fold, but if you watch any videos here on this YouTube channel, you know when people check raise the river in cash games that are not the highest stakes against the best players in the world, they're probably going to show you the nuts. And look, if we're saving an extra $1,000 or something like that, I think this might actually be a very sad fold.
I mean, look, I just basically have like the nuts, I think, and I'm just never going to be folding with a straight here. I make the call and he shows queen jack of diamonds. I actually show my hand because I literally didn't even know another straight was possible. This whole time I thought the 7 was the nuts. I guess I'm playing a little too much poker these days because I didn't see that another straight got there. Pretty sick cooler to start, and I stack off big time.
Stacking off big time, right to start at 10:50 p.m. Okay. Late sessions. Look, this is a tough spot. I certainly don't fault Rampage for calling. I probably would have called some portion of the time in this scenario, just because it's kind of hard to have queen jack, because will that even call the 375? I don't know, maybe. Ugh, yuck. Did Rampage punt this one? I don't know. If he did make a mistake on the river by not knowing how to read the board, it probably cost him about $1,000. What I want to know is, what is the most costly mistake you have ever made at the poker table that was just a brain dead blunder? Where you just forgot what was going on, you misread the board, you misread your hand, you didn't know how many chips somebody bet, you didn't know how many chips they had in their stack, etc., etc. Take a second, pause the video, let me know in the comment section below. And for another hand from Rampage where he gets put to the test on the river by one of his best friends, Mariano, a very popular video blogger, make sure you check out this other video I have for you too. That's gonna be it for today. Good luck in your games, have fun, click the like and subscribe button before you leave, and head over to that other video. And, well, I hope you learn how to read the board before your next poker session.